Hello everyone, I'm Inverse and I'm finally back with another build order breakdown video. It has been 2 months I believe since my last video. Unfortunately I will not really be able to do this on a regular basis during the summer. Main reason for that is bandwidth limitations. Back at my house, I'm at home for the summer, I'm not at school, and bandwidth is a little bit of a problem. I am of course going to try to do videos as often as possible while I'm here since I have a little bit more free time. So I'll definitely be doing my best to get some more videos out. This of course is going to go out relatively soon. I will hopefully be able to do another one this month and then hopefully 2 in June. And I will be aiming for a bi-weekly schedule until September when I will hopefully release a video or 2 every week. And I will be ramping up throughout the course of these next few months, leading up to, of course, the Company of Heroes 2 launch, hopefully a beta a few months before that launch. Super excited about that. But in the meantime, been playing a lot more recently. Gonna continue to try to stream, so obviously check that out if you can. That, of course, is subject to my bandwidth limitations as well, so that's going to be reduced a little bit as well. But I'll be posting replays, talking about the game on GR and stuff like that. So, without further ado, let us, where's the pause button? There you are. Let's get on with this game right now. Moving on to Sturzdorf now. We've already covered Angleville and Langres. This will be a game against Exits Barton PL. A very, very good Wehrmacht player and a fairly good American player as well, though his Wehrmacht is definitely his strongest. Let's just take a look at this map right now. They, of course, changed Sturzdorf a lot over the latest patch. If you haven't played or haven't really been around the game since that latest patch, you will notice most interestingly this little area right down here. They straightened out these 2 points, so there was no advantage, or there is no advantage for the northern player as there was before. They also moved around the plus 16 munitions point, putting it over here instead of over here. Makes it a little bit more harassable and a little bit more difficult for a player to hold this point. And they also evened out some other points, nothing too spectacular, but it's a fairly positionally balanced map. I personally find it very difficult as Wehrmacht against Americans. I do know of the existence of a lot of very powerful pin builds, so if you're interested in something like that, I do definitely encourage you to check that out. But for the duration of this series and for these 2 videos, I will of course be focusing on Volks Volks Sniper MG, since that is my kind of area of focus at this time. Now, gonna notice first of all my capping order. This is kind of what I like to do every single game on this map. I like to get this plus 10 munitions very, very quickly. It's very easy to defend, and it's very close to your base, and it's a very nice point to have early on. Now, what I like to do with my early Volks is move up here and try to wire off behind this piece of cover and this piece of cover. I do this on either starting position. You'll notice when I start from the north, I'll do it as well, just on the other side. Now this Jeep kind of puts a wrinkle into my plan, but it's not going to be too big of an issue. I've got a Pioneer in here to help and a Volk squad, so he's going to be forced to run away, and I am going to be able to get that wire down eventually. It was a little bit of a pain, and if your opponent happens to send, say, a rifle squad right over here and preventing you from laying this wire down, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to push on this left-hand side instantly. It's just a lot easier if you can get there before your opponent does. And the reason for that is once your sniper hits the field, you're given a lot more freedom to push the left-hand side, and he's either going to have to retreat or take a whole lot of damage, and you're going to be able to push him off that way. This is also something I like to do on this map a lot, is put down sandbags right beside this munitions point. This is a very important munitions point early game, just because it gives you a decent income and it's in a very advantageous position. So I do my best to get myself this without taking too much damage. And this is very nice because if your opponent comes in here and tries to charge you, you can just tap halt, and your opponent and your Volks rather will all stack and continue to stack on this one little area, and they'll all get green cover instead of, say, drag positioning where they would spread out. If you just hit halt, they'll all stop, not move, and they'll sit there and shoot. It's a problem against grenades and stuff like that, but not really a problem super early game. Now, as you'll notice, I have started my sniper. I'm also placing mines. These are, where there was a mine over here, wasn't there? No, he might have spotted this. I have a feeling he spotted that mine, so I canceled it. But I had put a mine right there. That's a very a popular spot for infantry to run through. This is also a very popular spot for infantry to come down. It's kind of a choke with this wire and this wire. This building also very, very key right now. And as you'll notice, at this point in the game, if we look at the tactical map, my main focus is these 3 munitions points. This point, and this point. These are the 3 points I want to keep. I don't really care about the fuel. As long as he doesn't have it, I'm perfectly fine. And I'm not really concerned about the right-hand side fuels. This will become a slight issue later on, and I'll touch on that in a little bit once I discuss my opponent's potential tech options. But for the time being, it's not something I'm worried about. I'm worried more about munitions, I'm worried about playing a long game, and I'm not worried about super, super fast tech. Because that's not the game I'm playing right now. I'm not playing a risky game. I'm playing what is the absolute safest and absolute most standard thing to possibly do. As you'll notice, this mine right there, very important. Mine here most of the time. Mine here even, mine here. There are a lot of really good mine locations on Sturzdorf, and it's very important against something like a Jeep, especially down here because any good player is going to try to flank around like that. So at this point, I elected for a bunker before my tier 2, perfectly fine. You can go the other way around if you'd rather, it doesn't really matter. I think I saw him planting a mine right there. Regardless, I'm getting a minesweeper. Definitely not a bad investment early game. It's going to delay my med bunker a little bit. As you'll notice, if I hadn't gotten that minesweeper, that I'd have 35 more munitions, and I'd exactly be able to build a med bunker right there. So that's a little bit annoying. But we're going to walk up here and see if I actually did see a mine. Did I see a mine? Did I see a mine? Mine. Yep, there was a mine right there. So minesweeper already pretty much pays for itself in terms of manpower and munitions, of course. Against a good player, minesweeper's absolutely integral. Now this is annoying down here, and this is something I'm going to want to react to instantly. You'll notice I'm sending almost all of my units down here, and the reason for that is this is one of the most critical points on this entire map for a Wehrmacht player. This point, and when you're on the north, this point. And the main reason for that is the absolute gargantuan amount of munitions you get from this point, and the relative ease of its defense. Just the fact that it's a long distance away from your opponent's base, but it's also a long distance away from your preferred front of attack. This is where I want to be focusing, because I want to be able to keep this left-hand side because it gives me a good base to push into the center and control 2 VPs, and also to push over here onto the right-hand side like I'm doing right now and harass a little bit. So this is my main area of focus. This is what I want to be focusing on every single game, and generally I tend to focus on this left-hand side every single game, unless my opponent forces me to focus on the right-hand side, which doesn't exactly happen all that much. Now a nice little retreat right here, going to buy me a little bit of time. Also got my med bunker up, getting my tier 2 up as well. And now I want to talk about tech options, because it's kind of a lull. We see my opponent hasn't gone bars yet. Generally you'd see bars. A normal fast bar build would hit by now. Haven't seen bars, so probably some sort of vehicle tech. Of course, when you go early sniper like Volks Volks Sniper MG is, you can never discount the possibility of a weapon support center follow-up. And it's definitely powerful and a good idea against my style of play, generally because I like to be safe and I like to go tier 2 unless my opponent tips me off early enough. And in this case, my opponent hasn't tipped me off at all. I have no idea. I haven't got any scouting. He hasn't shown anything with his infantry. He's been moderately aggressive, but not too aggressive. He was fairly aggressive early game, and then kind of slowed it down, but he's still pushing over here, and now he shows me bars. Fairly late bars. Usually you don't see bars that late, and you'll see right here, I had a pack building, and I instantly canceled that. Going to get a Gren out instead. Gren, far more useful than a pack. Obviously, I want to delay that pack as long as possible. That's my main goal, is to try and get away without anti-tank for the longest period of time possible. Because if I'm able to do that, I'm able to have the best anti-infantry capability possible at any given time, and it's going to put me in a really good spot. You'll notice also, for my tier 2, I'm building another MG. Generally want 2 MGs against bars. It's really, really difficult with less than 2 MGs. You end up taking a whole ton of manpower damage and a lot of drain, and it's just more difficult than it has to be. So at this point, my opponent's done a decent job of pushing me back, but because of my sniper, as I've mentioned in other parts of this series, it's not too big a deal if he pushes me back. I'm going to be dealing a lot of damage to him. I can run back to my base if I have to. I've got MGs. I'm really close to my base, whereas he's really far from his base, which means reinforcements are going to hit far earlier for me than they are for him. Going to make things a lot easier to defend. This was actually a little bit sloppy. I'm probably going to lose this MG. I don't actually remember. But I'll probably just be able to recruit. Who knows? Find out. We'll find out. The suspense. The suspense. Yeah, I lose it. And he's going to retreat, so I'll just recruit it. He hit a mine somewhere. No, he didn't. He actually swept that mine as well, which is good of him. And yeah, he hit a mine there or something like that. I don't know. Whatever. It actually doesn't matter that much. But he's shown me bars. And now if we look at the map, he has a lot of fuel. If we look at his fuel, he's got this point, he's got this point, he's got this point, and he's got this point. That's 5, 10, 20, 36 fuel. And an American player can do a lot with 36 fuel. But it also makes American players on Sturzdorf extremely, extremely predictable. And when I say extremely predictable, I mean 90% of my games on Sturzdorf are fast bars into Shermans. Almost every single game is fast bars into Shermans. It's actually gotten to the point where I generally build 2 packs before I even see a Sherman, just because, well, they're going to build a Sherman. That's just, like, that's kind of what American players like to do on this map. And it's important not to kind of blindly counter that all the time, but to actively seek out the signs of your opponent doing what you think he's doing, which in this case would be Shermans. Now he also has a triage center, so that's a little bit of fuel, a little bit of manpower that's going to delay his Shermans, but he hasn't built any weapon support center units yet. I mean, he could have built a sniper, but if he has, he hasn't revealed it. And aside from that, he's focusing mostly on rifles and engineers. Lots of rifles and engineers. He's harassing around, and he's really focusing a lot on the fuel. You'll notice I cut off his fuel on the right-hand side. Instantly heads back, tries to recap it. If we look back at my base, I'm finally getting my first pack. You'll notice I squeezed out 2 Grens just because I felt with my munitions income I would safely be able to defend with mines and the like for at least the early parts of the game and be able to delay that pack for as long as possible. Of course, Grens, as I mentioned earlier, far more useful than a pack against infantry. And if my opponent is going for Shermans, which I suspect, I am going to have a lot of time to be able to prepare myself for the Sherman. Shermans aren't a quick tech. Shermans are a fairly late tech, and it's fairly obvious when an opponent is going for Shermans just because everything is late. You won't see an M8. Generally, if your opponent goes for a motor pool follow-up, he'll have an M8 probably around the 12-minute mark. He'll have a sniper definitely, and if he hasn't revealed his sniper, that's just as well for you because you're still doing a lot of damage and he's invested a lot into a unit that he hasn't fully utilized or utilized at all, really. So in that situation, you're perfectly fine. And at this point, I'm just kind of biding my time and I'm expecting the Shermans. You notice I'm getting that second pack. I have no reason to suspect he's going Shermans other than the lack of information that he's showing me, which in this case is, hey, he hasn't built an, ow, that actually killed an entire Grand Squad, or Volks squad. That was unfortunate. But he hasn't shown me weapon support center, he hasn't shown me motor pool, and he has a lot of fuel, and he's had a lot of fuel for the majority of the game. All of those things scream, they scream tank depot, especially a map like this where tank depot is so prevalent and so popular. It's a very safe bet to make, and in a situation like this, it comes down to the fact that I am in a good enough spot that the only thing that's really going to cause me trouble if I don't prepare for it is Shermans. If he goes snipers, I already have a sniper. I can build a bike. I can quickly tech to tier 2 or tier 3 rather, and I can counter that a little bit harder. If he goes motor pool, hey, I already have the counter in my tier 2. I don't need to spend any more resources. Sure, I overcommitted a little bit in getting the 2 packs instead of the 1, which is what you would generally get against a motor pool play. But because he's been so passive and he's given me so much of the map and so much time with that map without dealing a lot of either manpower or resource damage, I can afford to give him that extra 290 manpower and say, hey, that's fine. You can take the advantage that me building an extra useless pack gets because you've given me an advantage that is equal to that or even outweighs it. So now, still suspecting the Shermans. I'm going to be going for vet. My preferred counter to Sherman's, Sherman rushes, Sherman's late game, anything like that, is to go for vetted Grens. Lots of Grens, lots of vet. And my rationale behind getting vetted Grens is my opponent can only counter them one way. He can either build Shermans or he can build snipers. Sherman snipers fairly similar in terms of manpower cost. On a map like this, fuel will not be the limiting factor. It'll be manpower. A sniper, of course, is 340 manpower. A Sherman is 420, so fairly similar. Both take about a minute and a half's worth of manpower income to actually be able to field. So I'm forcing my opponent to make a choice. He either counters my sniper by building a counter sniper, or he continues to build Shermans. And either way, I'm preparing myself for being prepared for either. Because if he changes out of Shermans and into snipers, that's perfectly fine with me. He's invested a ton of resources into those Shermans. He's built probably at least one Sherman that hasn't really done anything because I've already been prepared with a number of Shreks and my 2 packs and stuff like that. He also had to invest in the tank depot, which if he switches out of Shermans and into snipers or something like that, that tank depot is going to be mostly useless, not really going to do anything at all. And it of course wastes the time and the tech that he spent or that he put into the tank depot in the first place. So I like to go for vet 3 on my infantry just to force him to make a choice, because if he doesn't go snipers, my infantry is going to beat his infantry. Vet 3 on Grens is going to beat bars, especially when he's been forced to be fairly passive because he's been teching up so much. When you're teching up, you can't be nearly as aggressive as if you're playing aggressively, which means like building a lot of attacking units and putting on a lot of pressure, because you need the money that you would normally be spending on reinforcing for teching up and getting those higher tech units. So my opponent won't really have much in the way of veterancy, and he won't have a sniper unless he decides to invest in sniper tech, in which case I'm already ahead, as I mentioned before, and I can of course switch out if I like, anything like that. So at this point I've got my vet 3, and I still don't see him doing anything. At this point it's fairly obvious, at least to me of course, that a Sherman play is on the way. Of course, he could be trying to trick me, could be going for sniper, something like that. It's just highly unlikely. And in this case, as I mentioned before, playing off an unlikelihood is perfectly fine in a situation like this, because you're already at such a huge advantage just because of the map control he's given you and the situation he's put you in, that you can overcompensate for something he might be doing and still be perfectly fine if it turns out that you were wrong and he's actually trying to trick you or he's trying to do something else. Now, as you see right now, the first Sherman hits and isn't going to do anything at all. Not a single thing, and be forced back, going to have to repair, which is going to waste some time, and now he has a choice, of course, as I mentioned before, either more Shermans or switching out tech, getting snipers or something like that. Now, a small micro note on what I did with my packs: the moment you shoot a shot with your pack, instantly decloak it. Reason being, first of all, it automatically decloaks, so you're not losing anything by decloaking it. You're not losing damage output. You're not losing anything like that. And second of all, your packs move substantially faster when they aren't cloaked. So if they're going to be decloaked anyways and you have to move them, you might as well decloak them for real so they don't suffer the movement penalty of being in cloaked mode grants them, even if they aren't actually cloaked. So at this point, Barton just kind of trying to push up, trying to probe. His initial assault was deflected, and that's why I really don't like Shermans and rushing to Shermans so much, is because if your opponent is prepared for them, which in my case I was absolutely prepared for them, it's very difficult to do anything at all. Now, if you'll notice in my base, I am getting the tier 3 building up, the Storm Armory, and the main reason for that is I want to be prepared if he switches into snipers, because if he switches into snipers, I want to start pumping Pumas, I want to build Nebelwerfers, I want to build all those kind of things, because I want to force him to split his attention, split his time, and split his resources. If I continue to build Grens and he switches into mass snipers, he could have one Sherman, I could kill that Sherman, he's not going to build another Sherman, I'm still on tier 2 tech because I'm countering his Shermans. What I want to be doing is getting into tier 3 tech so I can force him to spend some of that money that he would be spending on Shermans or, M10s, M18s, Hellcats, stuff like that. I want him to be spending that money on, or rather, money he would be spending on snipers and stuff like that. I want him to be spending that on more Shermans, more M10s, because I want him to split his attention, and I don't want to let him completely hard counter one of my tech routes just because that ends up being the tech route I stubbornly decide to stick on. So at this point, we have 2 Shermans. Barton obviously going for the mass Sherman route, so I'm going to be constantly pumping Grens. You'll notice I built another Gren right there, spending all my munitions on Panzerschrecks, and just trying to deal as much damage as humanly possible while keeping all my stuff alive. Losing packs, not really a big deal. I can afford decrews on packs. Perfectly fine. What I do not want to do is lose any Grens at all. I'm of course going to want to focus down on the Shermans with all my AT. You're going to want to focus down one at a time most of the time. You never want to really spread your attention because repairing is so cheap in this game. It's essentially free. Not exactly free, but we're going to call it free for purposes of this discussion because it might as well be free. So at this point, my opponent just kind of trying to push up, but my 2 MGs doing a decent job of holding him back, keeping my sniper alive, keeping my sniper in the back. Vet 3, of course, very good against Strafe as well. And Strafe very bad when placed right beside a med bunker, because the med bunker does a lot of picking up dead bodies and giving free stuff to the Wehrmacht player. So just kind of try and push him back. Also harassing a little bit on the right-hand side. Mainly want to cut him off from his fuel, because now that I've realized, hey, if he builds 2 Shermans, chances are he's trying to focus a lot of his attention on Shermans, and I'm going to want to be ready for that, and I'm also going to want to delay that. And the biggest way to delay that is, of course, to delay his fuel. Also want to really be careful about VPs. VPs are the main way an American player is going to beat you late game with a strategy like this, just because he can outmaneuver you with his more cost-effective Shermans, at least relative to your infantry, just because every time he takes damage on his Shermans, he can repair them for essentially free, whereas every time you lose a man on your Grenadiers, you need to pay manpower to reinforce that. So he's going to be more cost-effective than you. The main goal that you are trying to go for in a situation like this is to have vastly superior infantry, to have superior numbers, and to have superior surface area and positioning. You want to be able to spread out as much as possible. You don't want a single strafe to do a lot of damage, so you always want to keep your stuff spread out. You want to keep your stuff out of your base, which I'm not doing a very good job of. Move. Must have fallen asleep. Alright, what's going on? We're just going to sit and watch and see. Okay, there we go. That was a solid like 20-25 seconds of chilling. Those guys are fired. It's terrible. So just kind of trying to push back on the right hand side. Got my packs, doing damage, shooting stuff. A lot of infantry at this point. He's going to try to kill my sniper by running it over, so I'm going to run it down here because it's going to be hard for the Sherman to get in there. I'm going to throw a Faust just to... I think I'm going to throw a Faust. Yeah, I'm going to throw a Faust just to distract him, slow him down a little bit. And am I going to shoot him? I should decrude. I'm really not focusing on the interesting battles. I'm like, let's watch Sherman chase a sniper that's never going to catch it. Yay! Like, look at this. He's really being resilient, though. But, he pushes me back, but I still have the entirety of the left-hand side. And at a point like this, with this kind of strategy, it mainly comes down to continuously building Grenadiers, as you'll notice I'm doing right now. Building Grenadiers whenever you can. Always having your stuff reinforced and waiting for the King Tiger, because the King Tiger is going to be your kind of endgame unit, your endgame strat. And you'll notice, watch this, this is so awesome. That's why, come on, come on, come on, pop it, pop it. There we go. That's why you salvage. Where's my guy salvaging? He was salvaging somewhere. Right here. Salvaging Rex. I know there's a battle going on over here. Shut up. Doesn't matter, because I'm going to talk about this. Salvage Rex. Salvage, salvage, salvage. Because salvaging that gave me enough munitions for a prop war to save my sniper. And that was yay. That made me smile. Even though it was a complete coincidence, I was perfectly happy with that. So, just continually building grenadiers, as I said. This is where the game gets kind of boring. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm repeating myself, because there's just not much else to say at this point. If my opponent switches into snipers, something like that, something that isn't tanks, I would make use of I would build, rather, the Sturm Armory. You'll notice I actually canceled the Sturm Armory. I didn't mention this before. I had this building before his Shermans hit, I think. I'm going to say I did, okay? I'm going to say I did. And if I did, the reason I was doing that was because if he wasn't going for Shermans or something like that, it was either okay, let's clarify this. I had either built it before I had seen the Sherman, or I had built it before I had seen the second Sherman. Either way, I had built it before I had identified that he was going to commit to Shermans instead of switching into snipers at some point. If he had only built one Sherman, or if I had not seen any Shermans, I would have built that Sturm Armory purely in case of like 2 or 3 snipers randomly popping out because I've been too passive and I haven't scouted well or something like that, and I was just caught off guard. In which case, I would really want that Sturm Armory up. But the moment I realized I didn't have it, or I didn't need to have it, instantly cancel it. Want to use those resources for something else. That's an extra, like, 7/8, 5/6 of a grand, whatever it is. I think it's 5/6, extra 5/6 of a grand, which is not a huge deal, but every little bit counts when you're trying to win a manpower battle. That was actually unfortunate. But what I did right there was he was kind of trying to run me over with his Sherman, and if your opponent ever tries to run over a sniper with a tank, just retreat it. Because a unit that's retreating does not, cannot be crushed. Can only be crushed after he retreats or before he retreats. Can't be crushed while he's retreating. So always want to do something like that and retreat, because even though he gets free shots off, it's better than him just running right over it and killing it instantly, which is never good. So at this point, I've managed to cap back the entirety of the right-hand side. I'm feeling pretty good. Got my Vet 3. Going to have a KT fairly soon. Got the 5 CPs for it. And he's lost a lot of manpower. I'm not going to talk too much about what goes on from here on out because the replay is almost over. The interesting stuff was mainly at the beginning. Just to summarize for these parts of the map, because the game is winding down, really want to focus on this left-hand side. Want to keep your attention on these 3 munitions points. This point, and this point. Any threat to either of these, or to any 3 of these, you need to be reacting to as soon as possible. These are critical points. You need them for mines, Shreks, medkits, all that kind of stuff. Munitions, of course, as I've mentioned in every one of my videos. Extremely important for Wehrmacht, especially in the early game. And you need to be prepared for those Shermans. Sherman's probably the most popular tech route, at least against the style of play that I prefer, because you allow them to sit around on this right-hand side with these fuel points, and you don't really touch them, mainly because you're perfectly fine if he elects for that heavy tank play. Excuse me. Just because you know how to deal with it, mainly via vetted grens, via a lot of infantry, and just good positioning and a couple of packs. 2 packs, of course, integral to a style of play like this. And blah blah blah. Keep rambling until the VPs tick out. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. But yeah, that's kind of at least how I like to play this map. I'm not saying it's the only way, not saying it's necessarily the best way, but it is the way that works best for me. So I definitely recommend you at least try it out. See if you like it or not. You might not like it, but you might find that it actually does work for you as well. And before the game ends, let's stare at the pretty tiger. Pretty tiger. I always thought that was a like the Notre Dame leprechaun. Whatever it was, the fighting Irish guy. That's what it always looked like to me. I don't know why. But he's just running around with the croc being all awesome and funny. And finish the game so I stop sounding stupid. It's totally not going to happen. This replay has literally a sliver left. You guys can't see, but I can see. It's like, it's minuscule, and yet it still continues. Still continues. Lots of infantry. Oh my goodness. Maybe that's why. Is the sniper going to die? That would be really unfortunate. Base rush? Base rush? No. Oh. It's going to end soon, so that is the first Sturzdorf video. I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize if I seem scatterbrained or unfocused. This is the first cast I've done in 2 months. I apologize. Please forgive me. My next one will hopefully be better. I'll, of course, be doing a game from North Sturzdorf next. Then I will be doing a game from South Samoa. And then I will be doing 1 or 2 community games, probably a game from Seph and a game from somebody else, maybe, probably Aimstrong. I'm thinking something like that. Aimstrong and Seph are the 2 big names that use this strategy a lot. Aimstrong, of course, built an entire tournament career over using these strategies. Seph used it to win a tournament a while back. 2 very prominent players, so I will be featuring a few of their replays after I am done with the general overviews of the maps. And there might be a few extra surprises thrown in there near the end. I don't really want to promise anything because I don't have anything worked out, but hopefully there'll be some cool stuff down the pipe for you guys, but we shall see about that. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Of course, really appreciate it. If you like what you see, I would also appreciate if you subscribed. Really, really helps. Also, check me out on Twitch TV. I stream a decent amount, not so much anymore, but you can, of course, check out all the archived VODs. If you like that kind of stuff, I use this strategy a lot. It is twitch.tv/InverseTV. Of course, follow me on Twitter if you like updates on when I'm streaming, when I'm posting, recording videos, all kinds of fun stuff like that. It is twitter.com/InverseTV. Aside from that, thank you all for watching, guys. I will be back in a few weeks with another Sturzdorf game. See you later.